Beef sales globally are valued at around $459 billion. And yet most people only eat a few parts of the cow. Is steak really the best part? So today I'm cooking an entire Wagyu cow nose to tail, making the most ideal dish for each and every part of the cow. Think of a cow like a secret map in a video game. And we're gonna unlock all the zones of the map, from the most expensive to the most overlooked. Everything can become your next favorite food as long as you know what to do. So let's see what secrets the cow has for us to unlock, starting with our first cut, the chuck roast. For our chuck roast, we're making my mom's pot roast a perfect dish. To cook low and slow to break down all the intramuscular fibers. Season your chuck roast generously with salt and pepper. Sear in a heavy bottom pot until nicely browned on all sides, then remove from the pan. In that pan, you're gonna add onions and garlic and saute until fragrant. Then pour in the beef stock, bring to a boil, reduce to a simmer, then lower in the seared roast, tuck in fresh thyme around the edges, cover and braise at 325 degrees Fahrenheit in an oven for 1 hour and 30 minutes. At this stage, we'll then take it out, add in our sliced carrots, return to the oven for another hour and a half, or until completely fork tender. Remove the roast and the veggies to a platter, cover with foil to keep warm, then strain the braising liquid. You're gonna add butter and flour, stir and cook to make a roux in a medium sauce pot or in the same pot that you used before. Pour in your strained braising liquid, whisk to combine, adjust the consistency with more beef stock if necessary, and season to taste with salt. Pour over your roast and carrots, and of course, have the extra gravy on the side to serve with each plate. Mom's pot roast. A little bit of gravy. Now look, you don't even have to cut this. You can just put the fork in and tear the piece off that you want. Bar none, one of the best comfort foods of all time. The rich gravy, the unctuous, tender, fall apart, melt in your mouth beef. And it's honestly not that hard to make. And in my opinion, one of the greatest ways of all time for families, individuals, couples, just a centerpiece to sit down at the table, chuck roast dish. Moving on. This is a 100% Texas Wagyu cow. And it comes from Pullman Market in San Antonio, one of the top whole animal butchers in Texas. I mean, this place is absolutely nuts. They got a bakery, fishmonger, restaurants, all in one place. They're good friends of ours, and they helped us acquire this animal. Our next cut from the Chuck Primal are the cross-cut beef short ribs, and they're perfect for Korean-style galbi. Now first we need to make our marinade. Start by blending a peeled and roughly chopped Asian pear, loosening with water as needed, just enough to get it to vortex. Once it's blended until smooth, add to a bowl, add soy sauce, mirin, light brown sugar, toasted sesame oil, honey, ground white pepper, salt, garlic, thinly sliced green onion, and gochujang. Whisk to combine, add in your beef, then let that marinate for a couple hours in the refrigerator, but ideally overnight. Now, to cook these, you're just gonna grill that over medium-high heat coals. Honestly, hot is fine. If they flare up a little bit, just move them around until nicely colored and lightly charred on both sides. Garnish with sesame seeds and green onion, and enjoy. A galbi-style rib is a rib I always wanna eat. This is Korean barbecue inspired. Everybody loves this. You go to the place, you got the little grill in the table, you put your little hot and fresh right in the mouth. Obviously, the best way to enjoy this is hot, right off the grill. Chewy, fatty, a little crispy on the edge from the char of the grill. The sugar in the marinade is not only providing sweetness, but it's also providing a little bit of smokiness, just a light burn, a little bit of char, like all these things like boom, boom, boom. And all of a sudden you're knocked out on the couch after you eat all these. Moving on. The cow's hind shank and foreshank is where you're gonna find our next cut, ossobuco, or really just cross-cut shanks. We're also gonna braise this, and the marrow inside that bone is gonna melt into the most beautiful, luxurious gravy. Start by scoring the outside membranes to prevent curling. Season generously with salt and pepper, then dredge in all-purpose flour. Shake out the excess and sear in a heavy bottom pot until nicely browned on both sides, 2 to 3 minutes. Remove the meat from the pan and then throw in some chopped bacon to render until crispy, stirring often until rendered and crispy golden brown. Then you're gonna add mirepoix consisting of onion, celery, and carrot, and a little bit of thinly sliced garlic. Season to taste with salt, saute until softened. Then you're gonna stir in tomato paste, cook stirring often until caramelized, then deglaze with white wine, reduce slightly, then add in beef stock, bring to a boil, then reduce to low and simmer. Adding your crosscut shanks back to the stock, along with thyme, rosemary, and bay leaf. Cover and braise for 3 hours. Then you serve this with a beautiful risotto, maybe some gremolata, and enjoy. Rich, fatty, gelatinous, sort of like stick to your teeth and melt in your mouth, and still having that nice sort of lacquering your tongue in the rich, beefy flavors. I mean, come on. And with a little bit of gremolata on top to help break that up, a little bit of freshness, a little pop of herbs and zest of citrus. Ossobuco by itself is a star dish, and to me, this might be one of the only ways to cook crosscut shanks. That's why this is in the guide. Moving on to the next one. Moving down the Chuck Primal to brisket, another tough cut that's perfect Texas barbecue style. But why not have the most famous Texas barbecue legend on earth, Aaron Franklin, owner of the world famous Franklin Barbecue in Austin, Texas. He is the man who put Texas brisket on the map. And this is the recipe he uses on over 44,000 pounds of brisket every month.
Briskets come up, they get trimmed. We season, we have our seasoning that we make. So it's salt, pepper, it's a bunch of other things that we've been tinkering with. And then about 10 or 11 a.m., we put them on the smokers. The thing about briskets is it's mostly damage control. So we've got a huge piece of meat on a cooker for 12, 13, 14 hours, and part of it's really, really thin, and part of it's really, really thick. So we spritz a lot to cool off the thinner part so it doesn't dry out. And if it does dry out, they'll start to curl up, and then you pull a bunch of fat in there, and that doesn't lend to a good bark. About 4 or 5, we'll start ramping up temperatures. So we wrap the briskets, they go back on. You know, we haven't rendered much fat before we wrap, so the idea is that that fat in the brisket actually renders in the bag. And probably about like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, somewhere in there, we'll have a couple briskets starting to come off. And of course, it's by feel, but we'll put them on speed racks. When they're ready, they go into the dish pit. We need them to rest. From there, they go into the warmers at just the right time. They live there until we go through them, we get them ready for lunch. At 11 a.m., we slice them, and out they go.
Moving on to short rib, in our next section of the cow, the rib primal. Sure, there's a million ways to cook this, but I prefer braising until they melt, or specifically used for quesadilla. Season your short ribs generously with kosher salt and black pepper on all sides. Sear on all sides in a heavy bottom pot until nicely browned. Remove from the pan, then saute onion, garlic until fragrant, then stir in tomato paste. Cook till caramelized, then pour in your beef stock. Bring to a boil, then reduce to a simmer. Add your meat back in, followed by a spice sachet. Remember, the full recipe is in the link in the description. I also have a full video for that on this channel. Fresh oregano, and all of your dried chilies. Reduce, simmer, and braise for 2.5 to 3 hours or until the meat is fork tender. Then carefully remove your incredibly tender chilies, place into a blender, along with a few cups of your braising liquid. Make sure there's no bones in that. Blend until smooth, add back to your pot, and let that simmer for a couple more minutes. Then remove your meat, place into a bowl, remove your bones, shred that up, then strain your braising liquid, and now we assemble our tacos. First, dunk the tortillas in your strain, now consomme. Place it in a cast iron griddle, or a cast iron pan, or a stainless steel pan, whatever pan you got, I don't care. Set over medium heat. You're gonna top that with shredded Oaxaca cheese across the entire surface, followed by a generous mound of your meat on one half of it. Close the tortillas and cook until both sides are crisp. Optionally, you can brush with a little additional consomme to soak into your tortilla, then serve with a side of consomme, finely chopped onions, limes, and cilantro. The crisp of the corn tortilla, but it's also soaked and laden with that rich chili broth, the tender fatty meat, cheesy, salty goodness in there. And then of course, cut the richness with a little bit of lime juice. If you want, you can open one of these bad boys up, sprinkle some onion and cilantro in there. This is one of the few things, and I'm not necessarily saying my recipe specifically, it is a perfect food. And the beauty of it is it can be done with many cuts, but I think one of the best cuts is short rib. Let's move on. Now we're moving on up to the standing rib roast. See, this is just a bunch of ribeyes that have not been split apart. Reminder, this is real Wagyu from Peeler Farms right here in Texas. Generously season your standing rib roast with salt and pepper. And when I say generous, I mean you literally cannot overseason this. Now ideally you wanna let this sit in your fridge overnight for about 24 hours to let that seasoning penetrate the meat as much as possible. Separately, we have a nice rub consisting of garlic, olive oil, rosemary leaves, and a little bit of whole grain mustard. Rub that all over your roast. Then in a roasting tray, place rosemary, thyme, bay leaves, half bulbs of garlic, and a couple strips of lemon peel for fragrance. Place a roasting rack on top of that, followed by your rib roast. Make sure your rib roast is directly over those herbs so that they don't burn, because it'll drip the fat on there and help keep them hydrated and perfume the roast. Place that in the lowest possible temperature oven you can get. 250 is most ovens. Some ovens will go as low as 150. And cook that until you get to an internal temperature of 118 degrees Fahrenheit. Remove that from the oven, let it rest for about 15 to 20 minutes and increase the temperature to 500 Fahrenheit. Now once the oven's to temp, place your roast back in and sear for another 10 to 15 minutes or until you get a little bit of color on the outside. Pull it out. You can rest it for a couple more minutes, but at this point it's already been rested, so you can go ahead and slice and serve with a nice gravy. Now for your gravy, if you have any rendered fat in your roasting pan, drain that out, set that over medium heat, saute some shallot and garlic until softened, about 2 to 3 minutes, then stir in your flour, which again should be equal amount to the amount of beef fat. If there wasn't enough beef fat, you could always supplement a little bit of butter to bring that up. Cook until slightly darkened, about 2 minutes. Add in bourbon, let that cook down for a couple seconds, then add in some beef stock until it reaches your desired consistency. Season to taste with a little bit of salt and pepper, and serve that alongside with your roast. roast. This feels like a special moment. Every time you pull a rib roast off, it's an imperfect thing. You know, it's kind of hard to get the rib cap to go to medium rare. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't, but we have a beautiful steak nonetheless. The beauty of a rib roast is even if you overcook the rib cap like I did here, unfortunately, it has so much fat in it that it actually can take the overcook and you end up with sort of like a tender, slow roasted meat on the outside and a beautiful medium rare meat on the inside. So tender, the slow cook time gets that muscle fiber to be broken down a little bit more while still maintaining that nice medium rare quality in the center, while the outside just like falls apart and melts in your mouth. I mean, it is so rich, you won't be disappointed. On to the next. Moving on to our next section, the loin primal. What essentially lives here when you cut this into slices is the New York strip steak. The New York strip is lauded as one of the greatest steaks of all time, so we're keeping it simple. You're gonna start with that bad boy, place that on your cutting board. Season generously on all sides with salt and pepper. Make sure it is generous. Add enough neutral oil to coat the bottom of a large stainless steel skillet, anywhere between 10 to 12 inches depending on the size of your steak. Set that over medium-high heat, and once it is ripping hot, place in your steak and sear until nicely browned, about 2 to 3 minutes. Flip and cook another 30 to 60 seconds or until the internal temperature reaches 125 degrees Fahrenheit. Now lower your heat to medium, add in a little bit of garlic, rosemary, thyme, and a generous knob of unsalted butter. Constantly baste your steak using a metal spoon until the internal temperature reaches about 130 Fahrenheit. Pull that out, pour your brown butter on top, and let that rest for 10 minutes. Slice and serve immediately. It's easy, it's fast, it always delivers good results. Let's give this bad boy a taste. That is one of the best pieces of beef I've ever had. Pullman Market is selling what I think is possibly the best beef I think I've ever had. What makes a great steak to me, like an all-around everyday steak, you sit down, you eat, and it's just luscious and perfect in every bite, and you can finish the whole thing, is the correct ratio of fat to meat. And in general, its overall flavor profile. And this, the flavor is perfect, it's super tender, but it has the absolute maximum amount of fat that I would want without it being too much. So it's so perfectly juicy, no dryness whatsoever. I mean, it literally explodes with juice in your mouth, and the exterior gets an unbelievable crust too. I mean, really good steak. It's one of my favorite ways to cook beef, but it's not the only way. On to the next. Now we're staying in the loin primal for the most expensive cut. It is the whole tenderloin, which when sliced is a filet mignon. And the best way to serve it is au poivre style. Now for this one, I'm actually gonna go for the center cut of the tenderloin. So I'm splitting this up, and then I'm gonna get myself a nice filet that's about 2.5 to 3 inches thick. Tie this up with butcher's twine so that it's a uniform circle. Pat the steak completely dry, and then season generously on all sides with salt and pepper. Make sure it is generous. Add enough vegetable oil in a stainless steel pan to coat the bottom. Heat over medium-high heat. Lay your steak in, cut side down to sear for about 2 minutes. Flip and sear on the other side until nicely browned. You can also kiss the edges just for a few seconds to get those browned and sealed up. Transfer to a 325 degree Fahrenheit oven until your desired internal temperature. Pull that out and let it rest. My desired temp was 130 Fahrenheit. While you make your sauce. In a medium saucepan, add butter, set over medium heat. Once the butter's melted and bubbling, add in coarse crushed peppercorns, stirring often, and toast until fragrant, about 30 seconds. Add in some chopped shallots, garlic, season to taste with salt, saute, and stir occasionally until the vegetables are softened and fragrant, about 2 minutes. Then increase the heat to medium-high and very carefully. Deglaze the pan with bourbon or whiskey. The pan will flare up if you want, or you can be very careful to then simmer it, but it probably will, and when it does, just be careful, okay? It's gonna shoot a lot of flames up in the air, don't freak out. Just let that boil until the flame stops, which will only take a couple seconds. Then reduce that mixture until it's almost completely gone, which is called au sec. Then add in beef stock, Worcestershire sauce, bring to a boil, reduce by half, about 2 minutes. Finally, add in heavy whipping cream and reduce until slightly thickened, about another minute. Cut off the heat and add in the remaining 2 tablespoons of butter, swirling until melted and emulsified. Now taste and adjust salt levels if needed, then just spoon your sauce onto a plate, take your beautiful filet, slice it in half, and present cut side up. Garnish with chives and flaky salt. Serve and enjoy. Little filet mignon, or really tenderloin. It's been a while since I've had it. I want to be an advocate for the tenderloin. The tenderloin tends to lack a little bit of flavor. Sometimes it's a little leaner. Whenever I make it like this, it really showcases the beauty of a tenderloin. It maximizes the flavor. It makes a sauce that goes beautifully well with the flavor. And if you get a nice, well-marbled tenderloin, I think this could compete with just about any other steak dish. I could eat this whole thing, and I need to stop myself now and move on to the next. We are staying in the loin, specifically the sirloin sub-primal. Now, believe it or not, sirloin itself is not actually a cut. It's 4 pieces. Up top are the picanha and the sirloin heart, and on the bottom are the tri-tip and bavette. But we're gonna be using specifically the bavette. Now this next one, my favorite way would be to smoke, then quickly kiss on a hot grill, then served with a nice chimichurri. This one is simple, but not necessarily easy. You're gonna generously season a beautiful piece of bavette. The larger the better, make sure it's thick. So you're gonna preheat any smoker you got. Get it to 200 Fahrenheit and make it smoky. And you're gonna place it in the smoker until the internal temperature reaches 120 Fahrenheit, which could take anywhere between 2 to 3 hours depending on the size of your steak. Now Remove them from the smoker and sear hard over a high heat grill. Let it rest for 10 minutes, then slice against the grain and top with a chimichurri and serve. The smoked bavette. When you smoke a bavette, it just goes really well with the flavor of the steak. The beefiness of the steak still shines through. Insane. The juiciness, the fattiness, that longer cook on the smoke helps kind of break that down just a little bit, and it's absorbed all that smoky flavor. It's salty, it's peppery, and then that nice, refreshing, acidic, and herbaceous chimichurri helps finish that off. This is a perfect dish by itself. I could eat this plate, I don't need anything else. No vegetables, no nothing. Just give me my chimichurri and give me my beautiful bavette. Moving on.
Next up, skirt steak, specifically for the more flavorful outside skirt steak, and the best way to make it for me would be a classic fajita meal.
Fajitas are easy if you make them the right way. So you're gonna start by combining our dry seasoning, consisting of kosher salt, ground cinnamon, chipotle powder, ground cumin, and garlic powder, and season your skirt steak generously on all sides. Make sure that that seasoning is firmly pressed in there. Major key alert. Place this in your refrigerator to cure uncovered overnight. This is super important for developing an insane crust. And you're gonna grill that over medium-high heat, lit charcoal, until nicely charred, about 2 to 3 minutes. Flip and sear on the other side another 2 minutes. Make sure you be careful, because this is a thin cut of meat, so pull it off when it's medium rare if you like it medium rare, or let it sit until it's done to your liking. Then you just serve that alongside the traditional fajita picks: Mexican rice, fajita veggies, charo beans, flour tortillas, or corn tortillas, and enjoy. One of the best ways to treat a skirt steak, sure, you can cook it a million ways, serve it with a chimichurri, whatever, but skirt steak always makes me think fajitas. The seasoning, it's a little bit spicy. It's got that heat. It's not too hot, but it's got a nice warming spice that coats the tongue, warms up the mouth. A little bit of smokiness from the grill, that charred beef fat really just kind of perfuming your whole mouth. Perfect, and also ready to be stuffed with any of these toppings, and they will not mask the power of the flavor of this incredible cut of beef. On to the next.
We're moving further down the loin primal to the flank steak, which our best recipe we think is simply marinated and simply grilled.
So for the marinade, in a blender, you're gonna add garlic, lime zest, black pepper, smoked paprika, ground cumin, fish sauce, orange juice, lime juice, cilantro, and salt. Blend until smooth, then emulsify in a little bit of vegetable oil. Now we have a flank steak here, which we have put between 2 sheets of plastic wrap and pounded out just
To make sure it's all one even thickness.
Place it on a sheet tray, cover with your marinade, and marinate in the fridge covered overnight. Then just grill this simply over medium-high heat over hot coals until nicely browned. Flip and continue cooking until you reach your desired doneness, ideally medium rare. Slice and serve how you like. Flank steak goes with anything. We're just gonna serve it plain just because this is more about the marination aspect of this steak. For some reason, flank steak really benefits from a nice marinade. The way that it soaks that flavor up without diminishing the flavor of the beef is incredible. And this is just like a nice, well-rounded grilled steak. Serve it literally any way you want, and it's gonna be good. So, moving on.
Back to the top of the loin primal for one of Brazil's most prized cut, picanha.
Another super simple one, but it's all about technique. Here I have a full picanha, which I'll slice into 2 to 2.5 inch steaks. You really wanna look for this big fat cap on top though, very, very important. Season them generously on both sides with kosher salt, no pepper, and listen, you can actually let these sit in the fridge overnight, uncovered, and they'll develop an insane crust and be seasoned all the way to the center, or you can just do this right away, which would be the next step of folding them into a C shape and loading them onto heavy-duty skewers. Ideally, picanha skewers, you can get them on Amazon, but also, by the way, if you don't have these or you don't want to get these, don't fold them into a C and just grill them like a normal steak. That's fine too. Grill over direct charcoal, moving them around frequently because that fat cap is going to cause a lot of flare-ups. You want to slowly get some good color on this without overcooking it. Once you get some nice char and maillard and it's cooked to your desired doneness, take it off, let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then you're going to slice thinly directly off the skewers. This is what makes this dish so special. It's the thin slice of meat coming directly off the skewer and being eaten immediately. It does something to the meat, I'm telling you. It's one of the most flavorful cuts on the entire cow. The deepness, the richness of the beef, yet curbed so well by the creaminess of the fat. It's got the right amount of tenderness, the right amount of chew, just salt. Sure, you could add a couple things, maybe a little pepper if you want, but something about just doing salt really lets this piece shine. On to the next.
We move on to our final section of the cow, the round primal. Specifically for the bottom round cut, it is one of the toughest bites of the animal, and the best way in my opinion is turning it into Italian beef.
Generously season your beef with salt and pepper on all sides, sear in a heavy bottom pot until nicely browned on all sides, and remove from the pan. And you're gonna stir in a lot of different things to give a lot of fragrance. Now pour in beef stock, red pepper flakes, celery seeds, ground paprika, fresh oregano, quartered yellow onion, ton of garlic heads, bay leaf, bring to a boil, then reduce to a simmer, return the beef to the pot, cover and transfer to a 350-degree oven until the internal temperature of your beef reaches around 135 Fahrenheit. Remove the meat, let it rest a little bit, and then place in the fridge to chill overnight. Strain your braising liquid and reserve. Now, the next day, you're gonna reheat that braising liquid in a pot, take your chilled meat and slice it as thinly as possible. You can use a knife, but I'm using a deli slicer because, let's be real, there's nothing that gets it thinner than that. Place your sliced meat into that hot braising liquid, make sure it's not boiling, we just wanna get it nice and hot and rehydrated. Then load a generous amount onto a toasted roll. This is a Toronto roll, or what we're using in this one, which has been suggested as an ideal alternative by our buddy Mr. Beef himself, Christopher, which he suggested a nice bolillo roll. Load that up, dunk both sides into the broth, then top with a homemade giardiniera. Remember, the full recipe for this is on the channel, in the link in the description, and let's taste. One of the greatest sandwiches on planet Earth is the Italian beef. Cheers. Thin, luscious, tender beef, so fatty. The marbling on this beef from Pullman Market is insane, unbelievable. But even if you can't get that quality beef, it's fine. Just get the best quality you can, because at the end of the day, it's this beautiful sandwich that makes it. This is my favorite way to use this cut, but that's not the only one. Moving on to the next cut.
We have literally gone all the way from the shoulder to the last part of the animal, the tail, which oftentimes is called oxtail. Our final recipe for oxtail comes from one of my favorite chefs in New York City, Chef Nikki from Irie Jerk in Brooklyn, New York. She actually joined us on my second channel, our recipe channel, which if you're missing the recipes, guess what? We still post recipe videos. They're just on the second channel, Josh Weissman Recipes. Anyway, here's her oxtail.
Now this I'm excited for. First, we have to make our seasoning, which is a mixture of salt, ground black pepper, MSG, ground allspice, sazon, Lawry's seasoning salt, smoked paprika. Whisk that together and then season your oxtails with that mixture on all sides. You're gonna probably end up using all of it. Sear in a heavy bottom pot until nicely colored. Then add just enough water to barely cover them. Add in some ginger, garlic, green onion, scotch bonnets, fresh thyme, Jamaican browning. Bring that to a boil, then lower to a simmer. Cover, leaving your lid slightly ajar, and braise in a 325 Fahrenheit oven until the meat is incredibly lusciously tender and the sauce is reduced and thickened. About 3 to 4 hours. Once that's done, stir in some drained, rinsed butter beans and just let that sit until heated through. Another 30 seconds or so. Serve that alongside some rice and peas and enjoy. This is the exact dish you make when you want everyone at the table gnawing on the bone because it's so good. When they run out of meat, when they finally finish toying with all the unbelievably, ridiculously tender, melt in your mouth, butter-like, fall apart meat, and there's nothing left, you'll find them fighting into the crevices of the bones of this oxtail just to find a little tiny morsel of flavor. And you can add other things to flavor this however you want, but the point is, the one thing that I think will have people at the table fighting to the very last bit, and that is the beauty of a nose to tail job done well. Anyway, subscribe, love you, bye.